Yo, yo, get up, nah I ain't a quitter. Toss me the ball, I'm a really big hitter. Big picture, I'm a straight killer. Rising the song to the highest bidder. Got juice, got gas, I'ma move fast. New shoes, new tracks, like who's that? I'm new, come back, better than last. Yeah, it's a new me, never gonna look back. Never gonna look back. Cause damn, I was built to last. You move slow and I move fast. And that's facts.
Woo! All right, welcome in Chicago to the Chicago Sports Podcast. Michael Totis, Brian alongside me, and we are getting into some Bears news. If you're with us last week, we were on the White Sox, but big week in the NFL, not just for the Bears. The NFL Combine officially starts tomorrow, but before the Combine starts, you get interviews from all the coaches, GMs, and it's not just the Bears that have a lot of news that we'll be discussing. There is a lot of news around the entire league that comes out, typically about contracts, guys that might be heading toward free agency a little bit, but we're going to be focusing on the Bears. And good thing for the Bears, they don't really have anyone that needs a contract extension. Look at Kyler Gordon. I think that's kind of assumed at this point. He's going to get that contract extension. He's 100% earned it. But before we dive into it, thank you for everyone tuning in so far tonight. If you haven't already, hit the like, comment, subscribe button here on the Chicago Sports Podcast. We're going to bring you all the news that comes out of the Combine. We're going to bring you some of the news before the Combine, though. Already see Plank, Erica, David. What is up, everybody in the chat? Well, Brian, how are you doing tonight, man?
Oh, I'm just finer than frog hairs. Finally had decent weather, 60 degrees, had some sunshine. This bear's ready to stop hibernating and enjoying life.
Yeah, and I see Crooked Commish in the chat as well. And I think the Combine is the biggest event, or not the biggest event, but it's the first event that you can really start to gauge what teams want to do in the draft. Like, we can do mock drafts right when the season ends, but that's basically based on team need. It's what does the team need? The Senior Bowl gives you your first look at guys that rise up the board, your Mike Greens of the world, your Armand Membus of the class. But really the Combine is where you're able to interview these coaches, see who they're paying attention to, really dive into what this team is looking at, and then it'll set up what they do in free agency as well. And you see a lot of bit of that with the Bears and what they were doing with Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson's interviews today. We'll start off with Ryan Poles, though, because what he said today is a lot different than what he said in years past, Brian. I don't know if you're too familiar. Maybe I can jog your memory a little bit. But in years past, he's been very vocal about being conservative in free agency. Like, we're going to go after guys, but we're not going to be willing to throw the Brinks truck at them just because they're available in free agency. He's been very vocal about being conservative, making sure they're getting guys at the price they want. That wasn't the tone of voice that I got from his interview today, and really that the quote says. He said today they're going to be aggressive in free agency for guys that they think fit their football team, and that sends a message of not just that they're willing to spend money, but when you're willing to spend money, you're trying to win now. You're trying to maximize that rookie QB contract that they have with Caleb Williams. You saw the Texans do a little bit of this last year going after Danielle Hunter in the offseason. And I said all the way back then, if Caleb Williams proves that he can be the guy, and Ryan Poles believes that, they will spend this offseason. It seems that's exactly it. And it seems that the target is definitely the offensive line in free agency. But before we dive into potential names, who they might be going after, I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with them already with so much talk in the offseason on the O-line. Brian, how does that make you feel? That kind of feels like the switch is being flipped on Ryan Poles, and it's win now with this Bears team and his aggressive nature that he wants to get into.
I agree with 100% what you said. You didn't leave me much meat on the bone, but I'll just add this is probably going for low-hanging fruit, but with this staff, it feels like you got professionals, you got grown-ups, you got Johnson seems to be so detailed, and he has a plan, he has a vision, he has an identity for this team, and not to be kicking Eberflus, he's probably a very nice guy. If he was your neighbor, he'd keep his yard up and wouldn't be any problems. But the world's got enough nice guys. he just seemed like somebody that wanted to be their buddies. And his philosophy was, well, I hope this works. And again, now you got somebody that's in charge. And I know a lot of people go on about Johnson, well, does he have the leadership? Because he seemed to kind of be like a quiet type people. Remember, Lovie Smith, Tony Dungy, and then I'm going to pull a name from way out of the archives, John Wooden, coach for UCLA basketball. They wasn't screamers, hollers, cussers, or whatever. They got the job done because they had leadership quality in authoritative type position. You got two ways of doing it. You can either be intimidating and use fear, which or you can have trust and respect, where people, if you have a bad game, you feel bad not for yourself, but that you let the coach down. And I think because of the staff that the way Johnson is and the staff that he's built, now Poles has somebody, hey, these guys know what they want. They have the experience. And you got a lot of ex-players too that are on this coaching staff. Like I said, this is the type of player that we need to fit our system. And with last year's staff, Poles didn't have that. So between the way Poles has managed the cap, which you can say whatever you want about his picks and trades, he's done a phenomenal job with this caps since year one. It has allowed the Bears to be aggressive from this year forward.
Yeah, and that aggressive nature will hopefully impact the roster. And I think it was Erica in the chat mentioned the comment. I was going to get into it a little bit. Was the praise that Ryan Poles had for Ben Johnson? I think you even got into a little bit, Brian. His football IQ, and I don't know about you, but that felt like a direct jab at Eberflus without saying his name, about just how much more knowledgeable about the game Ben Johnson has proven to have compared to Eberflus. And we're in the off season. It's the most exciting time to be a Bears fan because when the football starts, we're normally hibernating away. But we, having a guy at the helm that sounds like he knows what he's talking about, it sounds like it should translate to wins on the field, Brian.
Yeah, I agree. And even it don't necessarily have to be wins, but if you see the team progressing, I mean, that's last year to me. What was so disheartening about, I mean, the 10-game losing streak, it sucks. There's no two ways about it. But you've seen a team that gave up on themselves. And was that the players or the coaching staff or both? And with this coaching staff, I'm hoping, and I got the feeling that that's not going to be the case. They're not going to tolerate that. If you're not going to give 100% effort, hey, we got somebody that's backing you up that wants the job.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point, and it sounds like both Ben and Ryan, when they're coming together with this aggressive nature to go after free agents, really sounds like they're both going after the O line here. And I think Ben Johnson even made a comment today. Someone mentioned the Panthers and how last offseason they were super aggressive in going after free agent O linemen, and that was something that Ben Johnson echoed. He said that that's something that they would plan on doing, and I assume that's okay with you, right, Brian?
Oh, it's more than okay. I welcome it with open arms.
Yeah, and I will say, though, I'm not a huge fan of a lot of money on the interior O-line, and it's just because teams typically don't succeed like that. And I honestly did this when I was in class. I was bored. So I went through last year's some of the top teams. I went through basically almost a majority of the playoff teams from both conferences, and I just broke it down by how much of their salary cap was toward the offensive guards. I didn't do center included. I kind of just went with guards because it kind of feels like that's the biggest target for the Bears in the offseason. So the Chiefs clocked in at the most. They had 11.89%. But everyone else is very much lower than I think you'd expect. The Eagles are at 3%. Same with the Lions. The Bills are less than 1.5%. The Texans were at 4%. The Vikings were the lowest team on this list at 1.39%, and the Ravens and the Commanders also at 3%. So then I did a little bit of math. I'm like, all right, the Bears signed Trey Smith and Kevin Zeitler, which I think that would be phenomenal in the offseason. How much, just based off projected cap that they have, I think for PFF, what their contracts would look like, how much would the Bears cap be at their offensive guards? And it would clock in at about 9.5%. So it's not there's no one clear path to winning in the NFL, but it really seems like most of the good teams don't have that much money locked up on the interior O line. So I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little over cautious with that, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Brian?
Well, I know in the old days, back in my time, you used to be able to develop a quarterback, and what I mean by that, he sat on the bench 3 years or so. I mean, I hate to bring up Green Bay, but I mean, with Favre, with Rodgers, I mean, that's how they was able to do. In this day of age, that's not the case anymore because I mean, you draft, especially if you draft a quarterback high, you're expecting results now. So that philosophy's changed a little bit to where you have to invest in the line just for the simple fact you don't want to get your quarterback killed. I can remember when David Carr, when he came out of Fresno State, terrific quarterback, but his whole career with Texas, gee whiz, he was, getting sacked at least 55 times or more each year, which ruined his career. And we've seen with Caleb, I mean, getting sacked, 67, 68 times. Uh, I don't want a repeat of that. So you have to invest, but at the same time, you have to be smart about it. And I understand right now, Trey Smith, he's the top dog.
Mm-hmm.
But Zyler may give you the same production. Yes, he is a little bit older, so you're going to have to plan in 2 years or so for his replacement. But he is familiar with Johnson's system, and he is a quality player. If you draft wisely, you could have somebody that sits behind him for a year or so to learn, almost like an intern or apprentice type thing. So, I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. The whole thing with the NFL is juggling that salary cap. I mean, we could all think of players we like to see, and there may be most of them would like coming to Chicago. I mean, Chicago is a great city, but at the same time, you got that cap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. There isn't entirely one method to the madness. And again, we know, and I mentioned the Chiefs, they're the highest team at a little under 12%. So you can most definitely win spending a lot on the interior. I just found it interesting that most of the top teams haven't done that. Now, I don't know if that's entirely part of they just don't have to, or how important really is the interior old lineman. I mean, we did see that this year. It's pretty important when you have bums. I must just say how it is. They have bums playing offensive guard and center. So I don't know how much they really need a Trey Smith with the top dog on the market, or if they just need Mekhi Becton and Kevin Zeitler, just competent guys, Brian. I don't know how much they need the elite guys, or are you bigger a fan of going after the top dog, going after Trey Smith, and then taking maybe one in the second round, maybe even the first round? I don't know. Are you fine with having that top dog and a rookie, or two maybe not top dogs, but competent guys, vets at the guards?
Well, when you're talking about a non NFC AFC championship team, so that takes 4 out of the 32. It's probably not the smartest thing to spend on the highest price free agent guy, only because if your team is bad, that means you got other holes to fill.
Yeah,
And
I agree with you.
sinking everything in one position. Yeah, if you got a all-star offensive line, and to me, the line on either side is the most important thing, really, because if you can't run and pass, or if you can't stop the run and pass, you're probably going to have a losing season. Uh, it try to get good players, but at a budget, and then you draft for that uh, hopeful Pro Bowler.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity um, to add talent in the offensive line in free agency. I think one quote that really stuck out from Ben Johnson was about the Declan Doyle hire, because I'm sure just like you, the Declan Doyle hire caught me as a bit of a surprise. It wasn't a name that I thought we were going to get. So there's quote about Declan Doyle. He said, I ended up calling John Morton, who took the OC job at Detroit. He worked with Declan the last couple of years and asked him, how's Declan doing? Is he ready to be a coordinator? He said, Ben, listen, he's another Ben Johnson, which I think that's a good thing. I'm banking on that good thing. Listen, I think he and I are a match made in heaven. He thinks very much like me. It's been awesome getting him into the building the last few weeks. Extremely detailed, extremely organized. The age does not matter. And I think that's big. I think that's big. Ben Johnson's offensive staff, he's looking for guys that think like him, that they are detail oriented. And Brian, I don't know about you, but the Bears have not been a detail oriented franchise for basically my whole fandom. And you go even back farther than I do. So tell me a little bit about how that makes you feel, having more detail oriented guys in the building.
Yes, with the game of football, you need 11 players that work as one. So the coaching staff and their coaching, teaching, whatever, when they're working with the guys, they have to get those guys working as one. You can't have just one all-star and then the rest just, for lack of a better word, just half-assed.
Mhm.
With Doyle, to me, he seems like a Johnson clone. And the good thing about that is everybody's going to be thinking Johnson's calling the plays, which he is. That's going to give, to me, Doyle at least 2 or 3 years of being with this team, and then if Bears are successful, he may go on to another team. But yeah, this coaching staff outside of Johnson, I think the two biggest hires was Allen and the offensive line coach Roger, or however you pronounce his name. Uh, those guys, I think they're going to work wonders with this team. And I'm real happy with this coaching staff.
Yeah, the coaching staff that Ben Johnson's put together, I think there's been a few surprises, but overall, there seems to be a common theme with the Bears staff, and that's they want guys like Ben Johnson. Not in the fact that they're all offensive geniuses, but that they are all detail oriented, that they all have the same mindset. And if we could have a baby Ben Johnson and Declan Doyle on the team, he'll get poached at some point, but to have just another mind like that in the building, I think would be a very good thing for this Bears team that, again, we all know the Bears struggling on offense. That is nothing new at least in my lifetime. I've really only probably seen one or two half decent offenses in my life. But I think one of the big things that we've kind of heard it in the coaching hiring cycle, that Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles are going to be connected. They're going to work as one. But today, I think that really enforced the idea. I think they've, based on what they were talking about today, it really sounds like they are connected together and they are working as a cohesive unit. That's why when we see guys get cut, like Demarcus Walker, Gerald Everett, those guys, that's not just Ryan Poles' decision. That is also entirely Ben Johnson as well. It isn't just one guy. And it'll be interesting to see exactly how they go about this combine week. There should be a lot to look at. I assume those linemen will be looked at heavily. But overall, Brian, what did you make of Poles and Ben Johnson, what they had to talk about today? Maybe there's something that you want to talk about specifically that maybe they mentioned.
Oh, I watched a little bit. I didn't, shame on me, watch both of them, all of their pressers. Uh, I like how Johnson, he's very clear and to the point, what he wants, what he expects from the team. He seems really happy to be in Chicago and to be working with Caleb Williams. And I'm just overjoyed to see how those two can work.
Yeah, that was another point that he brought up was why our Caleb Williams. He had a long conversation about it. Actually, reached Lions Twitter, and it kind of pissed them off. No idea why, because what Ben Johnson said was 100% accurate, and he highlighted Caleb's ability to escape out into the pocket and extend plays. He also noted that that's how the NFL is changing. It's not exactly your Tom Brady, your Drew Brees anymore of 1, 2, 3 progression in the pocket, get the ball out quick. It's a lot about that isn't entirely gone from the game, but a lot of the quarterback position now is played outside of structure, outside of the pocket, what you can do when the play breaks down. And that was one of the big things that he complimented Caleb for. It was his ability to escape the pocket, extend plays, and not exactly go down, but it was also his mind that he was complimenting. But a lot of Lions fans, for some reason, took that as a jab at Jared Goff, but it doesn't take the smartest person in the room to see that Jared Goff is not as mobile of a quarterback as Caleb Williams.
Well, true, and that's what the whole point of when Johnson, when he first took the job, was, hey, it's not going to be the same playbook because you got two different types of quarterback. So yeah, he's going to break down his playbook. I'm sure there's plays that he likes and all like that he thinks Johnson or Williams can do well at. But at the same time, he's also kind of start from scratch, which is another reason why he picked the staff that he did. And like he said today, and this is major kudos for me, he didn't just pick, buddies or, friends of his. He went outside the box to get guys to fit his vision for the team. And that, coaching staff was the first thing, and the team's going to be the second. You want mute on us, Michael.
Sorry, when we accidentally pressed the mute button there. But basically all I said was the big reason why that Ben Johnson came to Chicago in the first place was talking about Caleb Williams. It was all about Caleb Williams the entire time. And basically today just kind of reinforced that whole idea. Caleb Williams is the main reason Ben Johnson's here. And I think there is one more thing I want to talk about. And it was he was talking about DJ Moore. And DJ Moore, we all know how talented he is, but he did have a comment, trying to pull it up real quickly, from Aaron Lemming on Twitter. He highlighted DJ Moore as one of the best after catches receivers in the league. But he did say one thing, Brian. He said, no block, no rock. And I think that's a very good philosophy. That already brings up this accountability that Ben Johnson mentioned in his introductory press conference. You're going to need to be able to block to work in this offense. And if you're not blocking, you're not going to get the rock.
Yeah, I mean, that all just comes back being detailed and saying what you mean, meaning what you say, and holding everybody accountable.
Yeah, because when you're not holding people accountable, it kind of sends the message that you don't really care. There's no real culture here in the locker room, and that is something that lacking with the Bears last year. But we got 49 people watching right now, a lot more than the past couple of weeks with college basketball and White Sox. I'm glad to have everyone here, everyone in the chat that's commented. I'd go name by name, but there have been so many of you guys commenting. Keep bringing them in. We might answer, or not might, we will answer a few here in a little bit, but seems like there's just a lot of Green Bay hate right now in the chat, which isn't uncommon with Chicago and in general. So that's good to see. Still got the rivalry alive, which is always good to see with the Chicago Bears. But overall, Brian, there'll be a lot of news coming out in the coming days, combine, who they're watching. I did see one interesting thing. I'll leave you with this, a little bit of a proposal. I did see 2 mock drafts from 2 key scouts. I think it was Matt Miller and Daniel Jeremiah, or not scouts, but just draft guys in general. And they had Luther Burden falling out of the first round. And I know that was a name that was initially thrown around maybe at 1 or at number 10. He falls out of the first round. How would you look at potentially taking a wide receiver in the second round, or you think that's a little too early and you'd rather spend that somewhere else?
For me personally, I wouldn't pick a wide receiver until 3rd or 4th round. But that's just me. And of course, who's to say that they don't pick up a wide receiver and free agent?
Yeah, with the O-line still needing to get a little bit better, there's really no. I don't think you can't not take a wide receiver, but I prefer one probably later in the 3rd round. I think with those second round picks, you're probably better off looking at the O-line or even an edge. The edge is one that they could look at. I also think one that might be a little bit overlooked right now. You could maybe take a cornerback. If there's a cornerback there that you're looking for, because we've seen Tyreek Stevenson, he's had his shortcomings. But overall, I mean, if you don't think he's that guy, I think you could look with one of those top 3 picks potentially at corner.
I think with Tyreek Stevenson, he's got the talent to be a starter in the NFL. He just needs to pop his head out. And having a coaching staff that, 1, good at teaching, and 2, holds everybody accountable, that should help Tyreek right off the bat. And if I'm not mistaken, I apologize for can't remember, and the the DB coach that they got from Dallas, he already recommended Tyreek to see some defensive back guru that can work with him.
Yeah, and that's one thing that you hope with these defensive coordinator hires that they've been able to make, that he can bring the best out of the players that maybe lost it a little bit last season. Tyreek's one of those big ones. I'll leave you with one more other name as well. Eamon Worry. He's the safety out of South Carolina. And trust me, I love Jaquan Brisker. I think he's very good player. Kevin Byard, they still have under contract, so not going to talk too much about potentially replacing him. But Brian, the saying goes, availability is the best ability. If Jaquan Brisker just isn't on the field, you might just have to start looking at a different option. This Eamon Worry kid out of South Carolina, I watched a good bit of South Carolina this year, especially toward the end when they started to maybe even make a push into the college football playoff. It might just be one of those areas they go to. Now, he might not make it to the second round, so this might all be for naught, but he has been slipping down boards a little bit, and want your thoughts about maybe not even Worry specifically, but just maybe a safety, especially Jaquan Brisker. I mean, he's had these concussion issues, man, and concussions, we know they pile up. After your second one, you get that third one, you might not be playing again.
Yeah. First, let me thank Erica Al Harris. That's who I was thinking of, and thank you for that. Ikamore, he's a unicorn. That you look at his measurables, and gee whiz, that just shouldn't be. Somebody 6'3", 6'4", 225, 227, and he runs what in the low 4.4s, 4.3s as a safety. Gee whiz, he's like I'm a Notre Dame fan, and he reminds me of Hamilton, the safety for Baltimore, with just that freak athletic ball. And then when you look at tapes, and it's not just looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane. He actually He's a heck of a player. Now the safeties, if that's a little bit different than the cornerback spot. I think the Bears are good at the cornerback spots. Safety, you hit the nail on the head with Brisker with what, 3 concussions. Uh, with Bayard, he's going to be what, 32 years old, and what, only one more year left on his contract. Yeah, you have to look at safeties. I mean, it only makes sense. Uh, Again, third, fourth round. And
Yeah.
to answer Indiana Jones, yes, me being a Notre Dame fan, I really like Xavier Watts too. He's a ball hawk.
I didn't really want to get into this comment here from Dr. Earl, and it was regarding the running back position. I know that's been a little bit of a hot topic, especially with the draft. I know toward the top of the draft, that's kind of where the focus has been, and it's been a little bit of a debate with Ashton Genty potentially being the look at number 10. But he talks about third round or fourth for a running back. The thing is with this draft class, it is so deep at running back. There really isn't too much of a fall off wherever you end up. And some of these guys that will be taken in the third and the fourth round will be instant impact guys when they get to the NFL immediately next year. And looking at that, knowing that, and I've known this for a little while, the Bears still, it did come out today that they scheduled a meeting with Genty. They were one of many teams, but on the list of teams that Genty had scheduled a meeting with, the Bears were the first team up. They had the earliest pick at pick 10. I believe the Cowboys were next at 12. And I don't know. I tweeted it out 2 days before Ben Johnson was even hired, that if they hired Ben Johnson and Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks were off the board, which I'm not entirely sure that'll be true. Especially with maybe Will Campbell. I think Kelvin Banks will be there at 10. But he might look at Ashton Genty. He might look at him as that Jahmyr Gibbs just due to how he's been evaluated as a running back. I saw something that as a prospect, based on your prospect score, he might hit the 90s for this one attribute. And the only 4 other running backs to hit it was Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Falcons guy. I'm blanking real quick. Robinson. Bijan. Yeah, Bijan Robinson. Those are the only 4 running backs to hit such a prospect score. I don't know. I'm not entirely against it based on what they do in free agency. And especially after this year, it seems like the running back position's been valued a little bit more.
Well, I got a few things to say about this topic. And
Here we go.
I may go a little bit left field, but I'll try to bring everything all together. First and foremost, and this goes out to any fan for all 32 teams. This is poker season.
Yep.
So
season.
all of your general managers, all of your coaches, especially the new coaches on teams, they're all going to do the coach speak. Right now, they have to choose their words carefully, just so they don't start a civil war, because we know how the media is and we know how fan base is. And I don't mean to step on anybody's toes. I'm including myself in that. We want to twist words, make a mountain out of a molehill, say something that isn't there or whatever. So take what all they say with a grain of salt. We can all hope what we have. Mock drafts are fun. All 32 teams knows what the other 32 teams need, and we can all look at over the cap and see where the budget is. So, I mean, it's no big secret. Keep that in mind, please. Now, getting to Gentry. I think he's going to be a hell of a player. The thing that scares me about him is if you, I found this on Fox Sports because I was thinking there was a rumor last year that he had quite a bit of fumbles. Fox Sports, I typed in how many fumbles Ashton Gentry have in his career. He's fumbled 10 times and he's lost 9 of them out of 750 carries. To me, that's kind of high. When you consider that I think Hampton has had 2 in his career, and I believe Caleb Johnson hadn't had any or maybe 1 in his career. I think it's smart on Poles to talk to him because Poles may be thinking, hey, if he could trade down a few spots, pick up an extra second or third round pick, a team that's hungry for him, so be it. I really don't see Chicago would have to just totally knock it out of the park free agency. I'm talking 2 or 3 offensive linemen and 1 or 2 defensive linemen, whether it's tackle or end, to even think about getting a quarterback at the 10th pick. When it comes to where you're at or where a team's at in picks, if you got conviction for that guy, I don't care what position he plays, you draft him. If you think that, hey, this is going to be a Pro Bowl player. I mean, a lot of people, Taylor, the punter, was upset. But you look at what he did for Iowa, he was a weapon. And he didn't have the greatest season last year, but he was a rookie. And I think he'll only do better. So regardless of what school a guy comes from or what position, if you are a player, you are a player. And if you feel strong about this guy improving your team, because when it's all said and done, that's what we want is for our team to improve. You get that player. Now, whether I agree that's the player they pick is a player that I want or not, I don't know. But that's why I'm sitting in a recliner at home and they're at the combine.
Yeah, and I think Ryan Poles has expressed positional value is one thing that they also take into account, which makes me believe that they don't go with an offensive lineman, especially one that's projected to play with guard at 10. Obviously, a tackle at 10, that's not completely uncommon. To take an offensive guard with a top 10 pick isn't very common unless you have a Quentin Nelson-esque prospect, but spoiler, there is none in this draft class. Will Campbell is a good prospect. He is not that good of a prospect, and especially when you have questions about where he might be playing in the NFL. But honestly, with the combine this week, that should be answered by the end of the week with his arm length. With that'll be the main concern, whether he's more of a guard projection or a tackle projection, or maybe even both. Maybe he can slide around a team's offensive line that could be valuable. But I think one more other position that they could look at, one that's very deep at the top of this draft, is getting another rusher, a pass rusher. And there's quite a few names that they could be looking at. I'm not a big fan of James Pierce, but it is a name that's up there. Michael Williams and Jalen Walker are 2 guys that I will continue to say those are my 1 and 2. Walker being my 1A, Williams being my 1B. I put Walker ahead of Michael Williams, though, just because of how versatile he is. It's a little bit more of a risk, but when you give Dennis, I hopefully think Dennis Allen can figure out how to use someone like Jalen Walker. And also, Brian, when's the last time a Georgia pass rusher came into the league and hasn't succeeded from the Kirby Smart era? It just hasn't happened. Look at Philadelphia.
There's nothing that I can add that you said, and there's nothing that I disagree. So, next question.
I did see Jeremy, I think that's how you say Jeremy. Sounds like KC might find a way to keep Smith. I think that definitely is still on the table. It isn't a full-blown conclusion that Trey Smith will indeed be hitting free agency and hitting the open market. Yeah, they could definitely still keep, especially with the salary cap increasing by about $20 million, I think. You might be able to find or slide Trey Smith in there. Now, when you already have Joe Tooney under such a contract, again, I mentioned how much money teams spend on their offensive guards. Kansas City was already the highest at 11%. Can you really afford to add another $20 million on top of that and maybe even end up closer to 15% for your offensive guards? I don't know if that's the best roster construction, but Kansas City is a team that well ran. They might be able to figure that one out. And obviously that would really be a disappointment to a lot of Bears fans that kind of already have it written in that he will be the starting guard for the Chicago Bears next year.
I'll add something to that question real quick. I think a lot will depend on if Kelsey retires or stays. And I'm hoping and I don't mean to sound like a jerk about this, but so be it. To me, Kelsey's got a big ego, and I don't think he wants his last game to be like what his last game was. So I'm hoping that he comes back. Does he need the money? Does he need the fame? He's got the ranks. Definitely no. But I'm hoping that his ego is that he wants to come back. And I think he's getting paid what, right around $17 million? So I
About, I
mean,
think.
if he retires, yeah, that gives KC some wiggle room to where they could get Smith. But also keep in mind, I believe, and I can't name the names, and I apologize for that, but Kansas City has several free agents. I mean, they only have like I think two wide receivers that signed for next year. You got that Bolton, that linebacker, the safety, Reed, I believe is his name. That's two starters that you got to sign that are coming off. Well, I don't know about Reed, but Bolton, he's coming off a rookie year. He's going to want to be getting paid. I'm sure Reed is too. Now, the downside, usually players, they either chase the ring. Once they got the ring and they become a free agent, then they're chasing the money. So that comes into two. And that's another reason why I kind of pointed earlier about, yeah, Smith is my number one guard. There's no question. But if his asking price, or if Casey's able to sign him and all like that, I wouldn't be mad at Zeiler as a guard if the Bears sign him. Granted, he's a little longer in the tooth, but the plus side is he's worked with Johnson before, meaning that they both know one another. So take that in consideration.
Yep. And just want to give a quick score update. Blackhawks up 1-0 over Utah. And see V-Dog, whoever you get at opposite edge, I'm not concerned at all. Dennis Allen is an elite damn play caller. He's much better than Flus was. I hope so, because Flus was honestly, like, if there's one thing you can compliment him on, he knew how to call a defense. I don't think it's a coincidence that the second Flus left the Bears, that defense completely imploded afterwards. So again, he deserves a lot of credit. That's why there's a lot of people clowning Dallas for going after him as D coordinator. If he gets the right personnel, I mean, I'm very curious to see how he's able to use Micah Parsons and Overshown down there in Dallas. I think that could be a lot of fun. Dallas's defense could be, I don't know if about elite is what I'd call it, but I think it could be a good defense in the top half of the NFL with Flus there. But again, if Dennis Allen's better than that, sign me up. That would be awesome to have a guy like that. And I think probably the biggest thing I'm looking forward to with Dennis Allen is how he's going to use Kyler Gordon. It's also kind of why I like Jalen Walker, because he likes to utilize a lot of exotic packages and blitz guys and positions and drop guys back that you don't expect on the offense. And Kyler Gordon, we even saw this year with Flus, who doesn't do it often. Kyler Gordon was getting to the quarterback, and I think the Bears better sign him before the season starts, because I think he's bound to put up really good numbers and potentially earn more of an extension than what they'd get or what they'd be able to sign him to if they signed him now.
Well, something that I said earlier to a person that follow on Twitter about Gordon, he's also Poles' first pick.
Mm-hmm.
You number one, the general manager should want to reward players by re-signing them, the players that have ascended, and Gordon has done that. That sends a message to the locker room: hey, if I do well, I'm going to get rewarded. Now, obviously, if you don't like the city or your teammates, then you're ready to get the hell out. But for the most part, yeah, I cannot imagine Poles not re-signing Gordon or renegotiating his contract sometime this year. I would probably say in between the draft and training camp, but it may be, before the trade deadline. Who knows? Kind of like what he did with Jenkins last year.
Yeah, and that's kind of been something with with a little bit of Ryan Poles' tenure.
Yeah.
He's kind of forced guys to prove their worth. I mean, most notably, it was with Jalen Johnson. With Jalen Johnson, they weren't going to pay him right away,
Mm-hmm.
and they had him go out there and prove that he can stay healthy. Because that was the concern with Jalen Johnson. He's talent is there, the production was there. Can you stay healthy? And he stayed healthy. He got paid, and that sends a message, like you said, to the locker room. Hey, I'm going to challenge you to prove me right. And if you do, we are going to reward you here. If when you meet our expectations, you will get paid. And I think Kyler Gordon 100% should be next in line to earn such a contract. I don't think he has to do the whole prove you can stay healthy thing, but I think he
Well,
definitely deserves that contract.
yeah, I was just using because what he told Tevin Johnson last year. Hey, let's wait a little bit, to prove yourself because I said Johnson, I meant Jenkins. In Jenkins' case, yeah, health was the thing. And something else to add to that, I don't think Poles wants to go through another Roshan Smith incident.
Yeah, yeah, that incident. I don't think we need to have another one of those on this team, but I do see. Brandon said bold prediction: Poles is going to get back into the fourth somehow, and I don't think that'd be too surprising. We've seen him already trade up in drafts before, not high up in the draft. Not like what something Ryan Pace would do with trading up so much and you lose all your past draft capital. But again, the thing with this draft is it's not very top heavy, or the talent drop off from round to round isn't that drastic. Obviously, when you get to the fifth round, probably in any draft class, there's going to be a talent drop off. But there's going to be guys that fall that aren't going to be to the fourth round that have potentially a third round label on them, and it's just going to come down to team preference. I don't think that would be ultimately too surprising. Now, what position he moves back into the fourth force, I think will be obviously determined by what they do earlier in the draft and free agency. But mentioned, if you don't go Genti at 10, that running back position is very deep. It could be for one of those guys.
Yeah, and something else. You look at every year that Poles has been the GM when it comes draft time, the Bears end up picking more than what they had at the start of the draft. So he's able to work some sort of magic to work out a trade. He found Booker last year, and if I'm not mistaken, I know a lot of people may not have been impressed by Booker, but I think he was one of the youngest players in last year's draft. So give the guy a little bit of time to develop, and we got the staff now to set him in the right direction.
Yeah, developmental is very much the case with Austin Booker. I think just based on overall not being able or not having a real defensive staff, Eric Washington disappointed in the area of D line development, at least for Austin Booker in year one. I think maybe Jervon Dexter deserves a little, or he deserves some credit with Jervon Dexter, what he was able to bring out of him last year. But overall, Austin Booker definitely a work in progress, but he didn't prove enough to not take a defensive end. I think that's what people were hoping for, that he'd show enough to say, hey, we're not going to go get another edge. We're going to trust this kid to continue to develop. But overall, that didn't happen. Really think edge is where you have to hit early. I think there definitely is a fall off, especially after the first round. Now, whether they think that's the most important, I don't know. I'm not in the GM room, but I think after watching Philadelphia in the Super Bowl, how much a talented and really good defensive line can completely overpower an offense. I don't know. That's just kind of where I lean right now, Brian. I kind of lean getting that last guy on the D line. If you're able to go into the defense next year and your 4 down linemen are Sweat, Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, James Pierre. I don't know. Pick your favorite out of those top guys in the draft. Maybe I didn't even name them. And then your tackles are Dexter and Andrew Billings. That feels really good to me, Brian.
I kind of agree with you. Where I'm on a different is I want a big boy on that inside D line, only for the fact we've seen what happens when Billings went out. And Billings, on top of being injured last year, he's also an older guy. So he's going to need catch his wind from time to time. They need to find somebody, whether that's free agency or the draft. I don't know, but they need to fill that. I mean, and obviously Montez, he's going to be Batman. He needs his Robin on the other side. I'm a little bit partial towards Booker because he's from Greenwood, Indiana, which is like 10 miles from where I am. So to me, that's like rooting for the hometown boy.
Yeah, always good to root for guys that grew
Yeah.
up close to you. Always adds just a little bit more layer to the sport, not just rooting for our Chicago teams that we so dearly love, even though they disappoint us year after year and doesn't seem to get so much better. But yeah, it's always good to have that additional layer to the sport. And yeah, Brandon mentioning possibly the worst third round GM in the history of sports with more than 2 rounds. Yeah, it really does feel like that because I don't think there's been a single half decent player that Ryan Poles is drafting in the third round. I don't have them all base or right in front of me, but when you have Amagaji and Velas, yeah, your track record there in the third round isn't exactly great. So maybe it's a good thing Ian Cunningham didn't get hired to get that extra comp third pick this year because God knows who we may have taken with that pick.
Speaking of draft, I got one question. Is this the last year of players enduring the COVID to where you got, somebody that's 26 years old in the draft?
I don't know if it's the last one. I think a lot of speculation was on if that would be. And I think I think it's definitely weeding out. I don't know if it's 100% weeded out because, like we said, there's not too big of a drop off once you get to the middle first to even into the middle second. There's going to be a lot of similarly graded people. So I think definitely there has been a little bit of, and I think that's actually a really good point that you bring up. But that might also bleed into next year's draft a little bit. And yeah, that was actually a really good point to bring up, Brian. I think that's kind of a reason why this draft feels so not too top heavy, and teams in the middle of the draft aren't exactly disappointed being there because there's just a lot of talent equally maybe graded, and it's just going to come down to who do you like best.
Well, every once in a while, my two brain cells bump into each other and come up with a decent idea.
Yeah, I mean, what is the saying? Broken clock is right twice a day or something like that. I've definitely had my fair share of moments like that. But yeah, everyone in the chat been going for about 50 minutes now. Like Trax just said, smash that notification bell, the like button, and the comments down below. Love seeing all of these. We'll keep going as long as you guys keep sending comments and chats. But yeah, Brian, I mean, a lot of the combine will start getting going this entire week. I'm not entirely sure of the position schedule, what positions are going when, but overall, I think obviously most fans will care about the O-line day. But is there another day that maybe you're looking forward to for a position group that isn't the offensive line?
I'm always curious to see who's the fastest at any position. And I'm also curious at the bench press.
Yeah.
Because in my life, my bench pressing totally sucked. And I'm in all of, the guys that weigh 30 pounds less than I do, and they would just knock me out of the water. I mean, I realize now at 61, I couldn't compete, but I'm saying the same thing 30 years ago. So yeah, the bench press and the 40-yard dash, it's impressive. Now, if you're talking about what I think important, depending on the position, the what is that? That 10 and 20-yard cone drill,
yeah, the
whatever
shuttle.
it's called. Shuttle, thank you. That broad jump and vertical jump, just because, especially for linemen, because you need that quick get off, and that shows power. If you remember Dexter, that was a big knock on him out of Florida is, man, he's slow on the get off. And the guy worked at it, and you didn't hear that from last year. I'm not saying he was the first guy off the line every time, but it was a dramatic improvement from what you've seen from him at Florida and even training camp, how he progressed. And speaking of which, I don't know if anybody's seen on Twitter, it showed him working out. And I'm just tickled to death that he's a Bear because he is taking his job seriously because he really transformed his body last year. And he's doing it again this year. And I would hope that rubs off on the other teammates.
Yeah, I definitely think that could happen. And looking at Brandon's comment, who's the combine darling, who's a projected day 2 player that glides into the first after his recording measurables. I think the easiest position to look at for a guy to rise up is offensive line because every single team needs offensive linemen, specifically at the tackle position. Right now, Donovan Jackson, not too bad out of Ohio State. I could see him. Gray Zabel is a guy that, depending on where you look, can be projected in the second round. Same with Ursery, the Minnesota guy. These are guys that are like back end second, guys that might still pop up into the first. But I think that position group, some of those guys in general are guys you could see skyrocket instead of being on the border of a first, second round pick. People are fully on board with this guy's going in the first round. And I think offensive line is always a good look for that. I could say running back, but overall running back isn't, again, we know the position value. Could a team take one? Yes. But I think there also isn't a wide receiver that's Xavier Worthy, blitz speeding fast, like what he was last year, to really rise up on boards. So I'd be looking at the offensive line there, Brandon.
Well, if I'm being honest, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head, Michael. I'll just be a smart aleck and say I'd like to see about 9 quarterbacks just totally jaw drop all the general managers, just so with the 10th pick, the Bears get Abdul Carter.
Yeah, that it feels like a fever dream. We might need a what is it?
Yeah,
What
I
do
know.
we need? Like what was it?
I'm
Laramie
having an old
Tunsil
man
in his
moment.
bong video from 2016 when that forced him to fall from like a top 3 pick all the way down to, I actually think it was pick 10 that he fell. We might need something like that. Or what is it? Jalen Carter incident where he done something, but we've seen Ryan Poles. He doesn't really rock with those type of guys. So even if that does happen, he probably still passes on him anyway.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, again, if Abdul Carter's there and Poles does not take him, I will be very, very upset.
Yeah, if I got to walk to Chicago to pimp slap him, I will.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think one guy that definitely has a more realistic shot to fall that far, but I still don't think is Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. Again, I've seen some people say that, well, why wouldn't we take him? Absolutely, you would take Mason Graham at number 10 if for some reason he fell that far. But I just don't feel like it's too realistic right now. But again, after this combine week, I think we see it every year. There are guys that just fall because other people rise up boards. For the Bears' sake, hope he's one of them. Again, I'm not going to bank on it, though.
Okay, so we don't need 9 quarterbacks to impress. We only need 8.
Right. Yeah. But again, position, it'll all come down to what these teams need in the top of the draft. And sadly for us, these teams all suck so much that they kind of need help everywhere in the draft. And I think one team will just see Mason Graham as best available and end up scooping him up way before the Bears are able to. And I don't think the Bears really should trade up. I don't think that they have to move off of 10. If anything, I think trading down probably fits better, Brian, because like I mentioned, the talent drop off from maybe potentially pick 14 to even in the later, like maybe like 35. You're not getting too much of a talent drop off. So I think maybe a trade back could also be an option for the Bears if they don't have anyone that they really like right there at 10.
I could see a trade. I wouldn't see them dropping too far.
Yeah, I agree.
Going from 10 to say 14, I mean that's not earth shattering. Going from 10 to 26. I don't know. It would have to be one heck of an offer.
Yeah, I agree. It would probably you'd probably be getting a day 2 pick back. Not sure entirely how far up you'd want to be, or what a team would be willing to give you, if they'd be willing to give you a second, or if they would be willing to give you a third to potentially move back. And that would also depend on how far back you are moving. If you only want to move back to maybe 15, probably only getting another third round pick. And as we just mentioned, third round pick, you might as well just throw it in the dumpster with Poles at the helm. But hopefully Ben Johnson's able to turn that tide of fortune around a little bit. Maybe Ben Johnson's really good at finding third round talent. He can convince Poles to take someone.
Now, I know this isn't appealing, but it's just a thought. That is kind of having the 39th and 41st pick. If you did trade, one of those to say 45 and, pick up an extra pick. Now, granted, it's probably going to be a 5th round, maybe, possibly a 4th. It's an extra pick. But then again, we've already talked about Pole's record after the 3rd round. So is that a bonus or not?
Yeah, probably not with Ryan Poles at the helm, sadly, even though it kind of feels like it. But yeah, Brandon says one GM was quoted saying there's only 4 or 5 blue chippers in this draft. Can't trade back, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, looking at the top of the draft, your blue chip guys, Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter. Honestly, after that, it gets maybe a little bit dicey. You could maybe say Ashton Genty as a blue chip guy, just really talented for his position. I might even say there might only be 3. I don't know if Graham is a blue. He's right there. I'll give it, for the sake of benefit, Brandon, I'll give you the 4 or 5. I'll give you 4 right there with Graham, Carter, Hunter, and I'll say Genty too.
Well, if that's the case, then none of them's going to be there at the 10th pick.
Yeah, the only one that probably will be there is, or maybe not even probably, but has the only shot of being there is Genty, just based on taking a top 10 running back typically is frowned upon. And I know it was earlier mentioned, I can't remember who said it. They could see Las Vegas taking Genty at 6. I know someone even said the Saints at 9, and I agree with all those picks 100%. That would fill a huge need. Raiders had no running backs, and Kamara is getting older, and Genty is a pretty similar build to Alvin Kamara in terms of how they play. So I could see that. The only problem is those teams suck so much that I don't think they can really afford to use that sort of draft capital on a running back, and probably try to look somewhere else where the Bears roster is a little bit more constructed. They have the money in free agency. They can fill other holes and potentially take a running back at 10. Again, a lot of this is what's the right word? Guessing. You're kind of guessing what teams are going to do, but hopefully after this week, we'll have a lot more of an informed guess, an educated guess of what these teams will end up doing.
Yeah, well, free agency is going to be the big key. I mean, the combine, you'll see, guys measurables and all like that. And of course, with me, somebody pops up, I never heard of him. I go right to YouTube and look at some clips. But the bad thing about that is you're going to see highlights. Well, hell, highlights, I could look good. So you have that. But yeah, once free agent kicks in and you see how teams built from that, then that gives you a clearer picture of how the draft should go. Then you can, maybe a trade makes sense or what have you.
Yeah. Been live here for an hour here on the Chicago Sports Podcast. Again, we got 63 people watching right now. Appreciate every single person that's checked in. I know Brandon's been here asking a lot of questions here. Appreciate every single one of them, Brandon, and sticking with us here tonight. Seen a lot of people here. I see James right there at the top. And countless other people have commented. Really appreciate everyone sticking with us. Appreciate, even if you were here for just a couple minutes or you were here for the entire hour 4, that we've been on here. Appreciate everyone stopping by. And again, if you are not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It means the world to all of us here at Chicago Sports Podcast. We're going to be bringing you a lot of news this week with everything coming out of Indianapolis and the Combine. There's going to be a lot, so you're going to want to make sure you're subscribed, hitting that notification bell so that you're not missing any of these shows later at night, to make sure that you remain informed about everything going on with the Bears, because this is one of the biggest weeks, Brian, besides free agency week, that we'll have, that really gives us an idea of what the direction of the Bears in this offseason. What position groups are they looking at, mainly at the Combine? We kind of assume it's going to be offensive line, defensive line, a lot of that, but they might surprise us. You could end up seeing them. Maybe they are heavily scouting safeties and cornerbacks. Maybe they are looking at wide receivers and running backs. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, there's surprise every year. And that, by me saying that, a player that you hadn't heard of all of a sudden becomes the darling of the Combine, and also what they're going to do. And that's just not the Bears. That's all 32 teams, because you may have a player that all of a sudden he's hating life at the team that he's with. A month ago, did anybody think that I can't think of the guy's name, Garrett.
Oh yeah, Myles Garrett
wanted to be traded. Yeah, Myles Garrett. I mean, a month ago, I never heard anything about that. So I mean, that type of thing happens all year, or every year. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. If you're new, please subscribe. If you're not new, have subscribed. Hey, you ain't got to do it any younger. Do it now. Right. Hit the like button. All of us at Chicago Sports Podcast, we work hard to give you good content, and you guys are our best salesmen. Your word of mouth. Tell a friend. People that like football, people that like the Bears, people that just, I don't know, love to hear me talk. Whatever your reason is, get on Twitter, tell people. Get on Facebook, tell people. Snapchat, whatever platform you use, bring them here. The more the merrier. We want to grow. We will grow, but we need your help for it. And again, it always amazes me that people come to listen, talk about Bears, but God bless you all. And I'm glad to meet you. Look forward to seeing you soon. Take care and thank you.
Yep. Brian said it best. We'll be back here next Tuesday, right with you here on Tuesday, us two together, going at it with more news. Now, what that will be is to be TBD, but I can assure you we will both be back here next Tuesday right here on the Chicago Sports Podcast. But for me and Brian, that'll be us signing off. Again, be sure to keep your eyes peeled again tomorrow with the Combine truly kicking off. And any Bears news, we'll have it right here on the Chicago Sports Podcast at about the same time, give or take a little bit. But again, if you're subscribed, you'll get it. So for us here at the Chicago Sports Podcast, be safe and have a good night, everybody.